You might be thinking about getting out in the garden. We're going to be speaking to Alan Titchmarsh here on Breakfast just before 8 o'clock this morning, but we're talking about plants of a different kind now.
Yeah, and this is one that you may not really give much thought to, but if you're buying flowers or maybe a pot plant, you might actually end up with more than you bargain for if you dig down into the soil.
Yeah, and that's because experts say that invasive species, and that can include, at the extreme end, snakes and lizards, are hitchhiking into the UK on various types of imported plants. Well, Max Barclay from the Natural History Museum is here with us. Max, thank you for being here with us. I mean, people will immediately start freaking out about the idea of snakes coming in their pot plants. That would be very unusual, wouldn't it? What are you more likely to see?
Well, I've never seen a snake, but going into parks and gardens in London, you find literally hundreds of different species that were not here 20 or 25 years ago that are coming in with horticulture and coming in with plants.
What is the danger? Is there a danger when we have these species in this country?
Well, there probably is a risk to agriculture and horticulture because some of these insects are pests, and some of them, which are pests, might be transmitting plant diseases. There's a disease called Xylella that they're very anxious to keep out. It's a disease of South American origin, but it can kill a lot of different species of tree.
Right.
And we've had plant epidemics before, like Dutch elm disease, which killed a lot of elms. We had the phylloxera, which killed grapevines all over Europe, and wine buffs are very aware of 1860s. A lot of grape varieties became extinct.
Now, some of these can look very innocuous, including these little creatures that you've actually brought in from your own garden. So what are we looking at here?
Oh, that's the rosemary beetle, also called the lavender beetle. And that's a species that's been here since the very early 2000s. And now it's all over any rosemary or lavender that you get in the southern half of Britain.
I mean, I don't know if you can see it there, because they are weeny, but they look like little black ladybirds, don't they?
Yes, they're sort of metallic. They've got some stripes on them.
Sort of luminous.
With purple and some green.
But you say these aren't particularly harmful, these ones?
Not really. I mean, they'll take a bite out of your lavender or your rosemary. But,
yeah.
I mean, councils are planting a lot of lavender and rosemary in the streets, and these things will often be on it. But what's interesting about that is it's gone from being a rarity to being absolutely everywhere.
And are they adapted to survive in our climate? Because I suppose there was an assumption that if something is grown in the southern Mediterranean, you know, be it an olive tree or on lavender or rosemary, that if it comes here, the weather would just clear it out in the winter. But is that not the case?
Well, there are some species which in the 1960s, scientists said this can't survive in Britain, and now it can.
Right.
So you've got a factor of climate change, and you've also got the fact that cities are usually warmer than the surrounding countryside. So the thing comes into your garden in the city, and it acclimatizes, and then it can escape into the wider country after a few generations when it's got used to the slightly colder temperatures.
One thing that might prick up people's ears is the Mediterranean spiny wolf spider. Now, I think we've got a picture of this, so be warned if you're an arachnophobe.
Sure.
It's a beautiful looking creature, but I don't fancy coming across one of those in my toilet late at night. Tell us about this.
Now, we found these in our house in London for the first time in 2024.
Give us an idea of the size of that.
Also, in the Natural History Museum, they showed up in the building.
Right.
They're about the length of your thumb.
Yeah.
It's a big spider. It's not quite as big as the biggest house spiders, but it's much chunkier.
Yeah.
And they're very fast moving.
Oh.
And
not easy to catch and get rid of.
People don't like them very much.
No.
But they don't have a very venomous bite.
But they will bite.
Well, spiders will always try to bite if you handle them too much. But I mean, I've managed to carefully put these outside.
Yeah.
They do come into houses, though.
Do they?
They sort of stand on the wall, and they look quite conspicuous, and so people are...
Maybe naively as well, I thought that there would be sort of more, you know, checks and balances in place. But is it because of the sheer volume of stuff we're importing that means it's harder and harder? I mean, you were saying a tree that was imported from Italy, you found what in the base?
Oh, yeah, I found a 200 lira Italian coin in the soil at the base of a tree.
So it had literally just been dug up?
It had been dug up, and they've had the euro since 2002, so this has been lying in the Italian soil for a number of years, and then I found it in the London soil, because when they bring the tree, obviously in order for it to survive, it has to be in soil, so they're bringing hundreds of tons of soil from southern Europe and dumping it into British cities and parks.
Now, the government says that they will never waver in their duty to support the UK's biosecurity, protecting farmers and food supplies, and that they have this broader target operating model to protect crops, livestock and so on. But clearly this is partly driven by our appetite for more exotic plants. Should we then be thinking about, when it comes to plant life in our gardens and in our homes, enjoying more local, sort of seasonal plants, as we are told to do with food?
Well, in some ways it would make sense. I mean, the vast majority of the insects that are being brought in are as innocuous as the plants that they're coming in on, and they tend to stay in the parks and gardens like the plants do, and not escape into the wider environment. But you do get the occasional one. And the harlequin ladybird from China and East Asia is an example that has spread all over,
now,
including the countryside. And obviously, it's not necessarily desirable from a biodiversity point of view to have a lot of these things coming in.
Should we be reporting these incidents then if you come across these species?
There are lots of apps and web programs where you can upload pictures of insects that you find, and experts will monitor those and see anything that's of particular interest. You've got a kind of homogeneous fauna in different cities. So you go and visit a city in France or a city in Germany, you'll see the same insects that you'll see in the city in Britain, but also you wouldn't have seen 25 years ago. So you've got this city fauna that's forming because of artificial trade in horticulture and plants.
Well, I think Ben has become very attached to his little beetles.
No, I'm saying I'm feeling really itchy. Can I give it you back?
I'll look after those.
Please look after it for me.
Max, thank you so much. It's been really fascinating to hear from you. Max Barclay from the Natural History Museum.
Time is 4 minutes to 7. We'll get the news, travel and the weather where you are. We'll see you very shortly.
Hello, good morning from BBC London.